it applies to this world. I don't want to do like time. So I get it pre-approved. Like, hey, is this going to work for hours? Yes, I am.
How's your mom and dad? They just retired. Yeah. Where'd your mom go? She's spending time with dad. She's with her current kids for a while. The big one's only 2.
He went to work and
Getting used to the life change. Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't do that.
take care of a lot of things.
Too much of a. I think I can't. Any sleep last night?
Well, he worked very last night.
Dad's been very at home last night. It's been very active. That's what you want to do.
Site inspection, civil site work, actually paving some roads last night. In fact, I have to go at night after this.
Hello. So I am going to go ahead and ask that if you are speaking tonight, that you start making your way up here, please. I'm going to just do a couple of announcements before we get started. So as most of you know, you'll be receiving an email before the end of the night with a survey and just a couple of announcements from us about what's going on. But just to highlight a couple of things, Bridge of Life, first of all, is offering free nonviolent crisis intervention training coming up on Sunday, May 23rd. So the graphic, if you're interested in registering for that, is in the email you'll receive tonight. Additionally, our teen nights are officially underway here at our Lakewood Ranch location. So if you do have any teens in your home who you think would benefit from coming and kind of having their own little personal gathering, please just go ahead and get in contact with Casey about that. And then finally, Computer Advantage is actually selected Bridge of Life to be one of the nonprofits in the running for a 3.5% share of their May sales. So if you happen to stop by the store and would be able to vote for Bridge of Life, that information is in the email as well, and we would love to have your vote, and we appreciate your guys' support on that. So I am going to go ahead and pass it over to, never mind, you have a microphone, Jody, but I will give you this microphone and let you take it from here.
All right. Well, my microphone is the lowest, so it might sound to you guys like I'm yelling, and that means that they're getting the appropriate volume. So I'm really excited about tonight. I've been in this space for a really long time, and a lot of times when I go to meetings or when I'm talking with caregivers, it's a pretty female-dominated space. Child welfare is full of a lot of women who care deeply about this cause and this issue, and they lead really well in that. But what I've noticed is sometimes there's just this lack of male voices. And I can think of a lot of families that I've talked to over the years, and you talk about how they got into this space and what motivates them and all of those kinds of things. And out of all of those families, I've been in this position with Bridge Life for 12 years and navigating our own foster care and adoption journey before that. And out of all the families I've ever interacted with, I've talked with 2 where the husband actually sort of led the discussion and the path forward into this child welfare or adoption space. And so, we know that this is kind of a women's led space. And there are probably some really good reasons for that, but husbands probably have a lot to say too. And so we wanted to be able to just invite some dads who are friends to Bridge Life to join us tonight to just kind of share their unique position and to hear from them and to allow you guys a chance to interact as well. So we've kind of talked about what are some things on these panelists' hearts and what do they think is important that we talk about tonight. But as you listen to their stories and kind of lean into whatever wisdom or advice they may have, be ready to maybe chime in. This can be really interactive. So, we talked about hey, we've got some questions ready and primed, and if we need to use them, awesome. And if the next hour and a half is just this really natural conversation that happens, that's really great too. So feel free to raise your hand, ask some questions, that kind of stuff as we get going tonight. But no better place to start than just to allow each one of these guys to introduce themselves and maybe tell us just what your place in the space is, because we're also coming at this from different perspectives.
Okay, thank you, Jody. My name is Tony Gamelin. I have 5 children. 2 of the oldest are biological, and then we have 3 adopted children. They're internationally adopted, so we have one son adopted as an infant from Sri Lanka. He's now 22 years old. And we have 2 daughters from Uganda, and we adopted them when they were 2 years old each, but they are now 18 and 15. I'm a co-founder of Bridge of Life from when Bridge of Life began. I'm also the board chair of the Safe Children Coalition, which handles the foster care system in this 3-county area.
My name is Rob Lursey, and my wife Emily and I, you can wave, hi, there she is, the hero. We've been fostering here in this area for almost 2 years. And currently we have 11 children in our home. 6 are ours that have my last name. 3 of them are biological, 3 are adopted, 2 of those from private agencies, 1 through foster care. And then we have a sibling set of 5 that we got placed with 4 of them at the end of September. And then their birth mom had a baby at the end of December. And so we welcomed her into our home at the beginning of the year. We live in the One More Child housing in Palmetto, which is why we're able to house so many children. So that's us.
My name's Tim Stevenson. I work at West Braden Baptist Church, and so our church is pretty heavily involved in this space as well, which is really cool because we get to do it from that end, but also from home. I've got 3 kids, 10, 9, and 6, bio, adopted out of foster care, boy, boy, girl, and we're fostering a little baby now. And I also realized, man, we missed a really cool opportunity to have a beard progression going on, and we just got it mixed up.
So I will say, so when the Facebook and Instagram graphic came out, and it's like, meet our speakers, and there were 2 shots of 2 of you guys on one side, and it was actually separated beard, no beard. So I was like, and Madeline created that, so I was like, hey, way to separate the beards versus the no beards. So I don't know what, somebody has grown something since that time. So then when she did this, there's more, balance there going on. So, but that's hilarious.
So my name's Michael. I serve on staff at Grace Community Church right down the street from here. And I run the outreach and missions department for the church, which is where the direct connection to Bridge of Life happened. I come at this from a little bit of a different angle. So my wife, who's right here, we do not have adoptive kids in the house. We do not have foster kids in the house. I actually was a foster kid that was adopted back when I was about 4 years old. It was a really bad situation, and by God's grace, he pulled me out of that, and I was able to be raised by a really great family. So I'm excited for the opportunity to be up here with all of you guys and contribute to this conversation.
Yeah, and I'm excited to hear all the different perspectives, and thanks just for that introduction. Rob, share a little bit about what you do in the foster care space professionally, if you would.
Yes, I work for a nonprofit called Care Portal. I am the area manager for the Suncoast region. So what Care Portal is a technology platform that takes vetted requests for kids and families in the foster care child welfare system and connects them to local churches who can show up with those tangible items to bring those, pray with them, share the gospel if God opens the door as well.
So here's just a little bit of a the more you know opportunity. So Rob is part of their national staff team. Is that a fair way to say it? Okay. So your paycheck comes from Care Portal.
It does, yes.
Whereas Denise Grimes, who's on Bridge of Life's team, she is the lead. Like, we're the implementing partner for Care Portal for Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto counties. And so Bridge of Life employs Denise to implement Care Portal in our area. So she's on our staff. But Rob's on the national staff, but it's the same organization. I don't know, it's confusing, but we all work together. But I don't get to tell Rob what to do.
Not in these settings.
Okay, so I'm curious, maybe a good place to start is, like, we kind of know, like, who you are, just a real quick snapshot of your family, but like what got you into this space. So maybe take us back to the beginning, like what motivated you, or how did God move to where your families ended up looking like they look. And, you know, we talked about it, like if you're like, hey, I really want to share this question, feel free to. And if you want to skip it, that's great too. So
I'll start because I think mine in some ways is probably the most boring, but actually I think in a kind of cool way. So here's the thing. A lot of times when you talk with people and they're involved in the foster care space pretty heavily, like they had this burning bush moment with God where it was just showed to them like, this is what I'm calling you to do. Or it's like this really cool experience they had where they saw this foster family or their parents did it or something. Like there's some sort of experiential thing that just gives them a passion for this. And I had none of that. For me, it was, and if you know me well, maybe this makes sense, but it's just really logical. Like growing up, I didn't know anybody that was adopted. I didn't really know anything about foster care except what you saw in the movies. But I knew that there were a lot of kids who needed homes. And in college, I knew like I was going to have a family and I didn't have kids. So why wouldn't I take those kids into my family? And so it was just a really interesting conversation with my wife, Beth, when we were dating of like, hey, like, I think I'm just going to do adoption. And she's like, okay, cool. Like, I'd kind of like to be pregnant at least once. Can we try that? And yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing for me personally, like I was passionate about it, but it wasn't from this, at that point, just theological conviction. It wasn't from at that point, this experience that just really inspired me to want to do it. It was just, there was a need and I knew that I could help. So why wouldn't I? And I think that's cool because sometimes, and here's the thing, I kind of wish that I had a really cool story, and those are awesome when people have them. But I think a lot of people use the lack of that really experiential or spiritual thing to be like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. And so my encouragement to them is always, well, if you're able to, then you should. So sometimes boring stories are kind of cool.
For sure. And I remember the first time you and I met, we were meeting about just church partnership possibility between Bridge Life and West Bradenton. And, you know, we partner with a lot of different churches. And a lot of those partnerships are unique. Like churches have different ideas about what they want partnership to look like. And so, you know, I didn't know what to expect going into that. But typically what I can count on is when I talk to someone on a pastoral staff, I can usually share some statistics with them or kind of, you know, give them like an idea of what local foster care looks like and some of that kind of stuff. Pastors do a lot of things, but they don't always know exactly like what child welfare looks like and system-based language. And Tim, what did you write your dissertation on?
It was a multiple case study on foster care ministries in Florida churches.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, so you know, like, you know stuff about foster care and like what, you know, as people of God, like what our response is supposed to be. So that's always left like such an impression on me. It's like, wow, I thought that I would be able to like share some things with you, and actually like you wrote like a whole paper on this, and it's pretty impressive. So yeah, pretty cool. All right, who else? What got you in here?
I'll go. Maybe not too exciting, but no, for me, it was really just a calling just since I was a child or even a teenager, thought about just adoption in particular for me. And so, it was 20 years ago now that we took that calling and adopted our first son, and then 2 more girls after that. But I've tried, in my mind at least, to lean on any promptings I receive from the Lord. And when there's a prompting, rather than trying to ignore it, trying to go after that prompting. And so done that throughout my life in various ways in ministries and so forth. So it's just one of those promptings for me.
For me, before my wife and I got married, we knew that we wanted adoption to be a part of our story. I had seen friends and students that I grew up with been fostered, been adopted. I didn't know too much about fostering, but as I became a teenager and understood the gospel for the first time, the picture of adoption was just, the biblical language, and so I was fully on board doing that. When we graduated college, my wife and I moved away to North Carolina, where I was pursuing seminary to do training there. And while we were there, we're like, well, we're seminary students. We don't have a lot of money, but we got a lot of time and a lot of love. So I don't know what that looks like, but Emily's sister was in Charlotte, which was a couple hours away, and they were actually adopting or fostering a little boy that they were picking up from Duke Medical Facility, which was really close to us. And so we kind of got this back seat view or front row seat view of what fostering looks like. And we're like, oh, we can do that. Like, we have time. We just need to say yes. So we put our yes on the table at that point and started fostering there. Then when we took a break, moved to Texas where we pursued adoption. And then the Lord brought us back to Florida. And then when we were in Lakeland, we just saw the statistics, and it was something that we couldn't unsee, with 100 kids being removed on average every month and 1,000 kids already in the system. Like, we just felt like we had to do something. So we got relicensed again and just continue to ride this fun wave.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think, even just in a few conversations that I had in the room this evening, like checking in, like, hey, how are you? What's been going on? There's a lot of heaviness in this room. There are a lot of really big parenting challenges that we bring into this space. And so I think it's good for all of us to remember our why, especially on the hard days, because that doesn't change, regardless of the tantrums or the teen issues that we face, parenting young adults, how challenging that is. All of us got into this space for a very profound and real reason. And I think that that's something that we can use even to just encourage ourselves as we face some of those tougher moments. So thanks for reminding us why this work is important. I'm curious, as dads who are in this space, or a dad who has come from this space, what are you most passionate about, and where do you see kind of an opportunity for dads to shine? We talked about how it can be kind of female dominated, at least in the voices. So what would you hope for?
Yeah, I think for me, if you look at fatherhood or motherhood, just parenting in general, for so long, even within our churches, we have just one mindset, and that's the biological family, the nuclear family, on how that looks. And then you kind of just get into this rut of assuming family is one way, but there is a great vast majority of people who maybe biological kids, it's not a part of their story, but they feel a different type of way because they don't fit into this mold. And I think what the Bible paints over and over again is this opportunity to be spiritual fathers and spiritual mothers to the vulnerable that Jesus told us to care for. And one of the most amazing passages in Scripture where Jesus tells his disciples, hey, you will always have the poor with you, but I won't always be with you in person. Now, Jesus, he's accomplishing salvation for all who would believe, the whole world. And he could have ended poverty and suffering just like that, but yet he called his people to follow in his footsteps, to incarnate amongst the vulnerable people and to care well for them. So it could be financially poor, it could be poor in family, it could be poor in a myriad of resources. And I think that the call there is for us to do that very thing. And when you now look at the way churches talk to parents, it's always, the celebration of moms, and moms, you're doing a great job, you need a break. And then comes the Father's Day sermons, and it's like, you guys need to do more, you need to step up and do all these things. But that's more of calling out. And so what I'm passionate about is not calling out dads, but calling up. And this idea of calling up to follow Jesus, because we can't do this on our own, right? We are all facing a lot of hard. My household, we're facing a lot of hard right now. And yes, this is a hard calling, but with Jesus promising to be with us in the midst of it, there's a beauty in it. And the fact of Bridge of Life and communities like this that exist to help resource people that put their yes on the table and can take that step of obedience. Man, what the Lord has to grow families and allow dads to have an impact, not just on biological families, but on bonus kids, is just an amazing thing. And so I'm very passionate to just cast a compelling vision for dads to just say, hey, let's put your yes on the table and let's see what the Lord does. And giving you the opportunity to be a bonus dad to these kiddos.
I'll just add real quick. When you look internationally, some of the ministry work we do internationally in Africa and so forth, a lot of dads are absent. A lot of dads don't stay home or don't fulfill their dadly responsibilities. So I think us, even in America, us dads, it's really important that we stay engaged, that we stay really, really there with these kids and engage with them, like you were just talking about, Rob, spiritually, and give them the security, the love that they need from a father that isn't always prevalent in homes.
Yeah, and this is something, I think there's several spaces in which you see, honestly, just some significant spiritual stuff happening that guys tend to be absent from the spaces that are kind of on the cutting edge or the more dangerous part of it. And so I've kind of struggled with, well, why is that? And I don't know that I have the perfect answer, but I think one of the things that I keep coming back to is the reminder that it's not just the things that you see, touch, taste. Like, it's not just distractions. It's not just being busy at work. Like, there's spiritual warfare happening around that space. And so for our purposes tonight, like, there's spiritual warfare happening around foster care. And I am grateful for all of the women who have stepped up and are doing all those things. And I would also, on top of that, love to see more guys step up and do things. And I don't think it's a, kind of like you're talking about, I don't think it's a guilt thing of like, why aren't you doing more? Do more. I think to a degree, there's that challenge part of it of like, you can do this and there is a space for you. Even within like kids ministry and things like that, again, typically it tends to be more female dominated and it just seems very maternal. And in part it is, but it's also paternal. Like, there's a role for guys. There's a very important role for guys to play. And so figuring out what that looks like so that it's not, hey, you need to fit into this role that you kind of see more as a female role. Like, no, you can be a guy and you can be a very manly guy. And in fact, that can be important. And you can do that in this space and do it really well. And so again, I don't know that I've got the answer there, but I think remembering this is a bigger spiritual problem, not just physical, and that it's not a guilt thing as much as it is a challenging and inspiration thing for guys to step up and join alongside you in walking that path.
Yeah, so I grew up in a home raised by a single mom who was practicing doctor at the time, it's still to this day, a superhero of a woman. She adopted me out of foster care at 4 years old, single mom. Not one day in my life have I ever had a dad in the picture. And here's what I'll say. Because of the grace of God, because of my mother, and because of the men who have stood with me, that is the only reason I have become any form of who I am today. So I will say, for me, growing up, and still, how vulnerable do we want to go? Yeah, I'm here for We'll lay it all out there. All right. So for me, at 32, with kids, a wife, a mortgage, things I got to deal with at home, the greatest struggle that I have that I can trace all the way back to my foster care journey is a struggle with my own identity. I can struggle through, did God really call me to this? I can struggle through with, we talk about this all the time. My biological father didn't want me. That's a part of that foster care story. So if my biological father didn't want me, why would I believe that there's a God in heaven that wants me? And the greatest opportunity I think dads specifically have is to be able to step in and remind children of who they are. That they're not what they've done, they're not the things that they've come from, they're not any of that stuff, that they are beautifully made in the image of God. And although the nuclear family may look different, that doesn't make you any less created by God. And that, for y'all, just because you have young ones, but for everybody that's here, like, I'm a grown man and I still have to struggle with a lot of the things through that foster care process and the foster care system, and coming of age to where I got to learn a lot of things about the family that I was removed from. There's, to me, no better opportunity for dads to step in than to remind kids of their identity in Christ.
Yeah, I love that. Anytime I get a chance to pray for our volunteers before these kinds of events happen, because our volunteers are amazing. They have huge hearts. They want to spend a couple hours on a Tuesday night watching your kids, and they have questions about the system and, different things like that. and they're trained with like trauma responsive approaches and all of that kind of stuff. And so like when I have a chance to pray over the evening, you know, it's like that the kids are safe, you know, that they have a really fun time, that parents get recharged, they get the education that they need. But like the part that always gets me choked up is when I start thinking about like this somehow being part of an event like this and being in homes like yours, that they will understand what a perfect Heavenly Father looks like, because they haven't gotten that, you know? And so I just like, it gives me chills to even like say it or think of it, you know, what an opportunity men have to show kids what a good dad looks like. Yeah, I love that. You talked about staying engaged. You know, Tony, you specifically said, we got to stay engaged. What does that look like? And especially sometimes maybe without that model, maybe give us some examples of what engagement has looked like in your homes, especially if there's been a pushing against that engagement.
For sure, yeah. So let me give you some more context about my situation. So I'm a single dad right now. My now ex-wife, we were married 30 years, and she now lives in North Carolina, and I have almost full custody of our kids. I won't go into the reasons why that is, but it is what it is. So my kids have felt like they've been abandoned from an original family in some other country around the world, and now they feel like they've been abandoned by a mom who's not well. I'll just say that. And now they have to deal with a single dad, who, you know, I'm not, you know, doing the best I can, but it's been a real serious challenge for me with teenagers and a young adult who have layers and layers of trauma. And so trying to find that balance as a dad between traditional parenting methods and trauma-informed parenting methods has been a real challenge. Trying to find boundaries with these kids about holding them accountable to some level of, can you at least keep your room clean once a week? Or can you, you know, I have two kids that can't drive anymore. They've lost their ability to drive because we can't afford insurance because they've gotten in so many accidents. So who's transporting them everywhere? Me. I bring my 22-year-old to work every day. I bring my daughter to school every day and bring her and drive home every day from school. Today was the last day of high school, so she's graduating. So my last day of driving her. I got one more still. So I say all that to say that, the balance of just trying to connect with them at levels when there's so much trauma involved because of what Michael was just talking about, what he went through as a foster child and so forth, and an adopted child into a family, to try to connect with them at levels has been really hard. They have been pushing back and putting up walls so deep and so hard that I'm not even sure how to penetrate them at times. Recently, my 22-year-old, who is probably for like 10 years, has had this wall up with me. So he lives with me, but he's basically a tenant in the house and would not engage in any relationship with me. Told me he will not forgive me. He will not forgive his mom. He's not going to forgive. He's not given his life to Christ. He's chosen to flee God, to put God up on the wall as well. And just recently, a month ago, I came to a decision. I had to say, I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't think I can have a 22-year-old in my house who doesn't want to have a relationship with me. And so we sat down, and he has a hard time talking with me. He gets angry. But we sat down at a table for 45 minutes and had the most intelligent conversation we've ever had. It came because I came in peace, I came in love, but just said, son, I can't do this anymore. You're going to have to find another place to live. This isn't working for me. I need connection. I need to feel like you're my son, not just my tenant. And after about a half hour, he said something, the most profound thing I've ever heard him say. He said, I want to have a relationship with you and my siblings, but I don't know how. And that opened up a door to say, okay, now I'm finally feeling his heart. I'm inside of him as to the struggles that he's going through. And so I said, son, Let me start taking you to work every day. He was resisting having me do. He just Uber. He didn't want me taking him because he had that wall up. So let me just start taking you to work. And he opened up the door and he did. And so what happens when we go to work now, right? We have car time. And I get to have conversations with my son that we've never had before. And I ask him about work and I ask him about this and that. And now we're connecting. And finally, after 10 years of not connecting, we're connecting. Just happened a month ago. So anyway, that's what's going on there.
That's such a great example, because I think traditional parenting would say, hey, you made this bed, you're gonna have to sleep in it, right? Like, you got in the wrecks, you lost your license, and I think there's always a time and place for structure and holding a boundary, for sure. But I love that you saw kind of a crack in the door, and said, like, all right, this, even at the expense of me driving, right, and doing another parenting responsibility that I shouldn't have to do with a 22-year-old, to see the wisdom behind that car time. Because, yeah, I say that with parents all the time. Like, it's the greatest thing in the world when your kid gets their license, but the amount of time that you get with them goes down so drastically once they start driving themselves. And a lot of that is like when you're catching up on what's going on in their lives. So that's great. Good job. Other ways that you're finding ways to connect, maybe even without that model that we talked about.
So, talking about engagement. Now, Jody, you said something a couple minutes ago to the effect of, you love thinking about the kids in homes like these where they're getting that image of the perfect Heavenly Father. And that's not my home. I don't know, that maybe that's y'all's, but it is not the image of a perfectly Heavenly Father that they're getting in mind. And that comes back for me to engagements a little bit, because if I try to be that perfectly Heavenly Father, I'm not. Even if I can get close, just from what they see, what I'm showing them is seemingly a perfection that they're not going to be able to achieve. And so for me, what engagement comes back to a lot is just like age appropriate but healthy transparency of, I'm going back more often than I want to admit to be like, hey buddy, I'm sorry about what I did, and here's what I did, and here's why it's wrong, and like, genuinely I'm asking for you to forgive me. And what I've told them is, like, I don't want to show you how to do it perfectly. Like, I want to show you what it looks like to mess up, come back before God in genuine repentance, and to feel that acceptance back. And so with the engagements, like, for me, a lot of times it's not even this like big, super, really fun thing. Because when I think back to a lot of the experiences that I had growing up that really stick out to me with my dad or with my stepdad, they're the small moments. And they're the things that weren't even intentional engagements. So let me share two quick stories. So one, I remember working on this boat. We're cleaning off a boat and kind of getting ready to go out with my stepdad, just me and him. And there's this mussel on the side of the boat. So I pull it off. The mussel's still in there. And I'm like, here, eat this. I'm a teenage boy. I'm in high school. I don't mean it. He had a temporary lapse in sanity that I don't know why, but he actually took it and he ate it. And I'm just like, whoa. And about 30 seconds later, he's puking on the other side of the boat. But what I remember about that is he didn't get mad at me. Like, he was not exactly happy in the moment, but like, he didn't get mad at me. And later on, we're laughing about it. Like, so just that controlled response in that moment of violently throwing up over the side of the boat, like, that made an impression on me. Other times where maybe it's a little more intentional. I remember in college, I'm getting ready to leave this job that I had for a while, and I was doing a lot for that job and kind of a significant part of the department that I was in. And so I was maybe bragging a little bit to him while I was working on a car one time. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do when I leave. I don't know how they're going to hold it together. And he stops what he's doing. He looks up at me and he says, son, nobody's irreplaceable. And he goes back to working. And I'm like, you just deflated my ego. But that's stood out to me, and that's been such an important thing. So again, for me, the engagements that I try to have with my kids, they're not necessarily these big moments, but it's just building these faithful, consistent, ongoing moments where it's reading at night, where it's, saying a special good morning in the mornings, or whatever it is. Just try to have that consistency built up of just those small moments, because I can't control what they remember. I can't control what makes an impact on their life, but God can use those moments to do that. And so as long as I feel like in my world, if I'm opening up to a ton of just normal engagements. I think those are the things God's going to use to have a bigger impact. Sometimes maybe it's something I say that's good and inspiring. Sometimes maybe it's my own failure and the transparency in that helps inspire them. So for good or bad, I just hope to have enough normal things that God uses that to plant some seeds.
Yeah, that's real good. I think what's helpful, kind of building off of that, is probably one of the most impactful books that I read that has shaped my intentionality with establishing habits is a book called Habits of the Household by Justin Whitmell Early. And he is big in there about capturing moments and establishing new habits. Not just, short sprints, but a series of just small incremental changes so that over the course of time, it leads to transformation. And so in our own house, what we've tried to do, regardless of what our family looks like, more nights than not, one of the values that we have is eating family dinner together when we can. And so obviously on nights like tonight, we don't have that. But we make it special. We have a couple candles that we light, and then we use the phrase Christ is light when they're lit, so that we're bringing Jesus now into the conversation. We talk about highs and lows, and we help teach our kids, regardless of who they are or how long they've been in our family, hey, while you're here, you're a Lurcy or you're a bonus Lurcy. And so we ask one another your highs and lows, look them in the eye, ask them the question, and now we're working on asking follow-up questions with that. After dinner, we try to establish a rhythm now reading scripture together, reading some sort of Bible story, or during Lent, we had a devotional reading that we have in there to where we read together, we ask questions, we pray, we sing songs, and then we conclude the time with a family identity statement. And we tell them that, hey, while you're in this house, you are a Lurcy. And if you don't know what that means, this is what we have. And so I'll say, who are we? And the response is Lurcies. And I'll say, Lurcies are what? And then our identity statement that we have printed out up on our wall is Lurcies are lovers of God and others, leaders in virtue, and laborers for the kingdom. And then I'll ask, what are virtues? And we, right now, we're just focused on the fruit of the Spirit. So then they sing, fruit of the Spirit's not a coconut. And then we talk about, and always being self-control. And so it goes through that. And so what those key moments then do is it establishes, because I'm going to fail them. I have just resided that I'm going to be the lead repenter in my household. I'm going to show them the love of an imperfect father. And by the way I love them is either going to be in comparison or contrast to the Heavenly Father with it. So I apologize a lot, and I use that identity statement for that. Like, hey, I was not doing a good job of loving you and loving God. And I yelled. And so that's also not having self-control. That's a virtue that we're trying to instill. Will you forgive me? And so it's all coming back to something that is attainable and giving them language for. And even for a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, it may not make as much sense to them now, but it's giving them concrete pictures that they can pull from later. So just doing the next right thing. And this took, a long time to create. So just incremental changes over the long haul.
That's so good. Michael, I'm curious, when you talked about the identity piece and then some of the engagement, like you've talked about your adoptive mom and like what a total rock star she was. Are there any things that you can remember specifically about what she did to kind of bridge that gap for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was what I was thinking while you were just talking. I had a professor in my undergrad who used to call it consistent obedience in the right direction. And that was her to a T. So I knew at the time, she adopted me while she was going through her residency program, which is just a crazy thing to do, to adopt somebody at that time. So we lived hours away from closest family members. I would be in some form of childcare from 6, 7 o'clock in the morning until 6, 7 o'clock at night, 5 or 6 days a week, so that she could complete everything that she was doing. Not ideal, but still, I will say, even now as an adult looking back, it was consistency. I knew she was there. I knew when she wasn't there. Like, it was just consistent obedience in the correct direction, that she took every opportunity she could to have a small moment, to have that sitting at the table moment. I could go on and on about the random things I can remember that happened 28, 29 years ago that still stick to me to this day and impact the way that I raise our daughter. Yeah.
That's great. We talk a lot in this space about TBRI, trust-based relational intervention, and probably every day of my life, even in like a coaching setting or non-caregiver type settings, I'll talk about that balance of nurture and structure because I think it's relevant in, how I interact with everybody. I mean, it's every relationship. It's not just a caregiving relationship. I know my initial response to TBRI and those kinds of principles is this is permissive. We're letting kids get away with things and we're not holding them accountable and some of that kind of stuff. It's soft. And I think that kind of attitude can come from people who have more of a traditional parenting mindset. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like men can really struggle with the nurture side of it versus the structure. Like I feel like in a lot of households, the man's got the structure part down and the woman maybe has the nurture part, and there's some sort of a need to blend the two. So maybe that's not true in your homes, but maybe give me some reactions to just that balance of nurture and structure, but traditional versus non-traditional parenting, trauma-informed parenting. The because I said so parenting.
I feel like I should give my wife the microphone for a second. Let her talk about this.
So I think everybody in this room is probably very glad that God has given men and women, because nobody wants me as their dad without her as their mom to help balance me out. I think when it comes to that, part of it is maybe just, the way guys are wired. I think part of it's a stereotype that we feel we have to also play into. But I think some of it for me, like, where do I hit the, okay, it can't just be structure? Well, because I've tried that and it doesn't work. Like with my boys, like I've tried that, like, okay, whatever. And it doesn't work. And so, all right, if I look at scripture and it is not just about modifying behavior, because you know what, with enough structure, you can modify behavior. If it's also about informing and shepherding the heart, then that takes something more than structure. I don't think it's less than that, but it takes something more than that. And I've seen those moments where you have that breakthrough where, my son's being a pain and it's just getting worse. And you try the punishments, you try all the things, and it's just getting worse. And so it's like, all right, just go to bed because I need to calm down. All right, so you're in bed and I'm calming down. Like, all right, this is abnormal. Why is he doing this? And this actually happened. So I went and I got him a sparkly water, and I got me a sparkly water, and I went up into his bunk, and I'm praying that the bunk bed doesn't break as I'm up there. And it's, here, do you want this? And I'm just sitting there. And then slowly he starts to calm down, and then it's like, all right, buddy, what's going on? And then you can talk through it more. And then I actually see some of that breakthrough, and I see him have some of those aha moments, and we actually get somewhere. Whereas when it was just the structure and do it because I said so, like that just made it worse. So just for me, experience has pushed me to go beyond that because I have to. And I see that in the kids. And that time was with my bio kids. So it's not even a trauma thing. Like this is just a raising kids thing for me of, like, I'm obviously a big proponent of the structure, and that's an important part of the way that I parent. But in and of itself, it's insufficient because I've seen its limits, and I've seen the benefit of being able to go and have some of those more nurture moments where you can break through barriers that just straight obstinates won't break through. And so, yeah, I mean, again, for me, it was just almost necessity that brought me to that place.
Yeah, I think for us, we have two older biological children, 31 and 29 right now, and so they were easy to parent, right? They were people pleasers. They followed the rules, by and large. So they've gone on to do pretty good things, and so then along come the adopted kids, right? And at least none of our adopted kids want to follow the rules. They don't like the structure. They don't like to be told what to do or to follow this. They actually go against the rules. So as a father, it doesn't compute with me. I'm like, these are the rules. Just follow the rules. It's not that hard. Just clean your room or put the dishes in the dishwasher or whatever. And they just repeatedly don't do it. And so for years, I beat my head against the wall, just wondering how to get these kids to do it. And we put our kids in, we call our 22-year-old, we put them in the timeout club, probably a million times. I said, you're like a lifetime member of the timeout club. And that never worked, right? So all these discipline things just never worked. And so I've had to learn the long, hard way that the more that me as a dad, the more I nurture, the more that I just love into them, the more I just press into them and try to ask them questions, listen, don't speak, and just listen and listen and listen, the better off it goes. But man, it's been a lot of years of hard lessons for me.
And I know we're speaking in like gross generalities. I mean, I've done it tonight of like women tend to be this way and men and certainly there are lots and lots and lots of exceptions to that. And I think when we're comparing and contrasting biological children versus children who have been adopted in the foster care system, I mean, everybody still has their unique experience, their unique personality. I mean, we can fill, lots and lots of books of, prodigal children who are biological children, right? And, all that kind of stuff. So not trying to label or put anybody, in a seat that they don't belong in, but we also notice that there are sometimes some patterns or some struggles that happen, in certain spaces. So just allowing room for, both of those things for sure. So I've got a really good friend who's got a daughter that she adopted internationally, and it's as if she has been part of their family since day one, and they've had none of the hiccups and hurdles, and it's just this absolutely beautiful, stress-free, problem-free adoption. And there are a lot of things like that, and then there are also a lot of biological kiddos who have chosen different paths than maybe what their parents have hoped for them. So just want to put I know you guys know that, but I felt like I needed to say that. So
yeah, I could say a number of things here. I'll try to keep my comment short. Number one is just the kindness that my wife is to me, in the same way that when Scripture talks about Adam and Eve and how a helper wasn't found suitable for Adam to accomplish the purpose that God intended him to, so he created Eve. I feel it's very similar to Emily and I in this work that he's called us to, that we're walking this out. We complement each other well in our strengths and weaknesses, and we have a lot of conversations, or little bits of conversations where it's like more gentle, and or hey, she doesn't tell me to do it over. She's way nicer in those words, but like, hey, is that the right thing? Something to that extent, just in the moment, just Holy Spirit ordained. And then it usually involves like, I need to calm down just in my own heart, because I'm not in a good place and I don't want to speak in anger because that's my default. But it's bringing the child, if it's a bio kid, adopted kid, or a bonus kid, to be able to go and sit with them and to relate to this child as a human being, as someone created in the image of God, to be open about my shortcomings, their shortcomings, and just like, hey, let's do a do-over together. Like I'm going to apologize, and I'd like a do-over for how I spoke to you, and then just really walking that out. So it's really just learning to stumble together. And then for us, like, we have been open. I don't know how many emails Jody's gotten from me, just like, hey, we need help. And we've had a lot of resources from here to where Natalie's come by to do counseling with some of our kids. Family Initiatives has come to help us with nurture groups and individual counseling for the kids, and helping us with strategies. So being humble enough to admit when you need help, rather than just throwing in the towel, but like, hey, there's a community of resources. What can we do to better ourselves in this?
let me tell you, too, you guys are doing a much better job of that. When I describe this audience, a lot of times I'll say, like, yeah, we had a church that did a donation drive, and there's some items in the back. And historically, people who come to the gathering or parents' night out, they're like, oh, we're fine. Save that for somebody else, And then I'd almost have to guilt you guys into it. I have to listen. I have to, load this all back up in my trailer tonight if you don't take it. And okay, perfect. And so then, many months ago, Casey on our staff transitioned from programs to this family support role, and it was a similar experience. It was like, hey y'all, like she is there for you. Like reach out to her, like, you know, let her know what your needs are outside of Bridge Life programs. And there was a little bit of that hesitation again, like, no, we're fine. And I would say in the last month or so, we've really turned the corner. There are a lot of families, and many of you are in this room, so thank you, who are like taking us seriously at that offer. And so thank you for that encouragement, because I feel like, you know, these resources and the people that we have in these roles really are to help with this journey, because it's challenging. So, okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Was there a question? Nurture versus structure. And I saw like some giggling when you were talking about him being cued by his wife.
I'm sitting up here. I feel like a little unicorn down here on the end, because here's we've already talked about my story, but being raised by a single mother made me a very maternal grown man. And I think it makes me a very good pastor in many ways, but my wife is very Italian, and so hear me out. She is the structure of our home. I am very just gentle in nature. That's genuinely just my personality. But I also know like what trauma responses are happening and how I'm raising our daughter. And so we talked about it when we first, our first son passed away just before his due date. But while my wife was pregnant with him, one of the things I kept telling her was, I get the opportunity to be for my kids what I never had. And I know that comes out sideways often with our daughter. So it's interesting. I'll take some tips from you guys after we get done.
And I think the important thing is that there's some sort of a balance, right, between the two when you have a two-parent household, and that there's conversation happening about, hey, I'm way over here and you're way over here, and really what we both need is to come a little bit more middle, probably. And so I like the cues that are happening, and that's healthy, and it's good conversation. So. All right, audience. What do you want to ask our fellows? Yes.
So this is for question for the foster dads. How far have you gone to help bio family, and are there any lines that you don't cross?
All right, and I'll repeat it real quickly. So for foster dads, how far have you gone to help a biological family, and are there lines that you don't cross? Perfect.
For us, it's kind of case by case on what's happening in that situation. We have a Google number that we share. We don't share our personal numbers. That's just easier in case someone is upset and we just get blasted. We can turn that number off. We can block it. We can do whatever there. But we always tell the biological families that we are here for them and we are in their corner, and however we can be helpful to them in the midst of this. That has looked like one of the first gatherings we were a part of. It was the advocacy people that came to, I forget the name, but basically they walk alongside biological families to help explain case plans and how to accomplish them and what's needed. Emily ran with that in one of our placements of another sibling set of 5 and connected that bio mom to her, and now she is one of the people that helps in that ministry. With some of our kids, it's been we set up appointments so that I can supervise visits and things that way, but it really just depends. That's not at the beginning. We build towards that in ways that just, if things are moving healthy along and there's trust built, we can do that. So that's been our situation.
And that's NAMI's Parents for Parents program, I think is what you're referring to.
Yeah, and for us, and I think it extends beyond just us, but for the most part, with all of our cases, Dad's not really involved, and he's not really in the picture, whether it be prison or just absent or whatever it is. So for the most part, my wife's running front line on the relationship with Biomom, and in that case, again, that balance that we were talking about helps come into play, because she's able to just really be Mom's champion and really emotionally invest in her and all this. And then I kind of draw those lines of like, all right, hey, but not that far yet. Or like, hearing about the conversations, like, hey, here's something she said, like, you've got to go back and you've got to address that. Like, you can't talk like that, or whatever it is, just pertaining to family dynamics and everything. So we've been able to have that. But to be honest with you, she's been running frontline more on that. The one time that we've had dad involved, it was actually a situation in which both parents were really solid. Kids probably shouldn't have been removed. So this was one of those expedited, like, we're really pushing hard. And so then I was able to be involved too. And I love that because that was the easy win. And I got to be in for that one. But yeah, for the most part, she's running point on relationships.
Speaking of running point, I'm just curious, Tim, like between the hours of maybe 10 p.m. and 3 a.m., how much do you help with the baby?
So I am solid from like 4 o'clock on in the morning. Before that, not so much. Yeah. I will say, Beth went away for Mother's Day, and so I had the baby Sunday night and then Monday. And I got up in the middle of the night, fed her a bottle. Like, I can do it. I just would rather not from like 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. or 8 p.m. to 3.
Yeah, she may have kind of fed me that question just right before we got up here.
So for the record, that's coming from the context of I'm a morning person. So I get up at 4 a.m. every day. But that means I go to bed really early. Yeah. And so, yes.
I love that you said, though, like you didn't really want to do that. But like Beth wants to, right?
Isn't that what moms do?
It's
they
her
love
joy to serve in that way.
12:30, yeah, in the morning, yeah.
Fantastic. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. All right. What else we got?
I wanted to make a comment about being an image for the children, God-like image, and you'll never be God. But you know what? Your kids, foster kids, adopted kids, biological kids, they will never have to fear that you're going to walk up behind them unexpectedly and whack them over the head. They're going to know that you're going to give them unconditional love. They know that they can trust you and always depend on you. So thank you, fathers, for doing that. I didn't grow up with a good father figure. Always, he wasn't bad to me, but for a long time it dawned on me, I don't know how to feel this father relationship with God and what you said, because finally dawned on me, because I didn't have that kind of father relationship with my father. So this is so important. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Questions? What do you guys do when you feel unprepared for what God's entrusted you with?
So like every day? What? So I'll jump in first real quick just because I want to share a story, because honestly I think so there's a lot that foster care can teach you, but one of the things that it has shown me over and over again is what Scripture means when it talks about God's strength coming through weakness. So there was a time. Here's my transparent moment. So we were looking at stepping back from foster care for a season. We were going to kind of hit pause and focus on some other things that were coming up that we thought God was leading us into. And so we had just finished fostering, and we were like, all right, maybe one more like single one short-term thing. And it was horrible timing on her part, to be fair, but it wasn't her fault. So she calls me as I've got dinner on. She's like, hey, I'm at therapy. Van won't start. You got to come jump it. Great. So I'm like pulling stuff off the stove. I'm in the car riding over, and she calls me again. And she says, hey, one more child just called. They've got 2 kids, this age and this age, I think like 4 and 5 or something like that, and I think we should take them. And my transparent moment is I think I said something to the effect of, what's wrong with you? Are you serious right now? Like, we're done. You're stuck on the side of the, like, I have to come get you. Why would you bring this up right now? Like, no, I'm not even considering this. And so I get there, and we're trying to jump the van, and she comes out, and she's emotional. And she's like, the 2 kids, one of them's in our son's class at school. And we actually had just spent a weekend, a Saturday morning with the family a couple months ago. That was the first time we'd met them and spent time with them. And I'm like, but no, like that's still too much. Like I don't want 5 kids. Like not right now. I know you're laughing, but I didn't. And
5 kids is a break.
I know, right? And I'm like, no, like that's not an option. And so in my mind, I shut it down. we make it home, eat dinner, go to bed. I'm on the way to the, into work the next morning, and I'm just wrestling with this. And honestly, I'm kind of arguing with God about it. And I'm like, God, I can't do this. I list all the things, and I land with, God, I can't do this. And not audibly, but very clearly, I hear him say, and like it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, duh, like, of course you can't. I can. That's the point. Do you trust me? But I'm hard-headed, and I had this moment of like really big clarity, and I just, in all honesty, told God, I'm like, God, I don't want to do this. Like, I've got all these other things that I think I'm going to do, and like that's what I want to do. I don't want to do this. And again, not audibly, but very clearly, I heard him say again, and I'm like, oh. Okay, so I went in, and One More Child's attached to where our church is. They have one of our homes that they use for offices. And so I went in there. I'm like, all right, look, I'm open. Like, let's talk. And we ended up taking those 2 kids, and the 2 kids I told you guys about that were like awesome. They probably shouldn't have been taken away. It was this really cool thing. It was our first reunification with this family that's now just good friends with us. And it came from the space of, I can't do that, and I don't want to do that. But God's like, I'm telling you to do it anyways. And in that, in my own weakness, like that's where I got to see his strength. So honestly, man, like that's one of the coolest things. It's not fun, but it's one of the coolest things to get in over your head and watch God do something really cool. And that happens a lot for me in foster care.
My tendency is to get overwhelmed easy, and that's pretty funny since we have 11 kids. And sometimes I have PTSD when I see Emily on the phone, and I'm like, who's she talking to? And then my 5 favorite words is, let me talk to Rob. And then she's like, hey, sibling set just came into care. I was like, I really hope they find a placement. And she's like, well, I already told him we take him. And I was like, yeah, I know. It's fine. It's fine. And then I go wash some dishes so I could work out some aggression of like just time in prayer. Like, what are we going to do? And how is this going to work? I'm like, we'll just figure it out. Like, that is a kindness of the Lord of like, I'm just good at bringing order from chaos. And I just jump in and I just immediately like, okay, we're going to do here. We'll just triage and just figure it out. And it's just, that's just kind of my default. I'm like, all right, we're going to wake up. It's going to be something new, and we're just going to figure it out. So not the best solution maybe, but it's there and it's a lot of fun.
It shows adaptability and flexibility, right?
Yeah, that's a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
That's the
By
Chat
way,
GPT version.
I was like many years into this work and had worked with One More Child for a lot of those before. I think it was the Peraltos that were like, it's one more child, right? Like, I don't know if you guys have, like, I was always like, one more child, but they're like, no, like, can you take one more child? You know, so now every time you guys say that, I think of that. So, what's one more? Or 5?
They can get us a bigger vehicle. We'll do more.
Yeah, and Michael, maybe you hit on this earlier, but I know this was kind of one of the questions that you were hoping that we would talk about is like, what do you do when you're kind of outside of, like, you're like, I don't know, like, God, you've entrusted me with this, and I don't feel equipped for it right now.
I don't think I could have said it better. I think God's grace is very sufficient in weakness. I've learned, coming at this from a different angle, but just in pastoral work and being a husband and a dad and all these different things, I rarely can go wrong by leading with weakness. Now there's limits to that and there's nuance to that, but I've rarely find myself taking the wrong direction when I lead my home, in the church, whatever it is, with, I don't know what to do. I just don't know. And there's a seeking of the Lord in those things. But man, time and time again, there has been opportunities in my life, personally and professionally, where leading with the fact that I don't know, God always comes through. Always.
Yeah.
Question. It'd be interesting to hear from you guys what self-care looks like as a father and a husband taking care of foster kiddos when there's overwhelm? Like, what does that look like in your family? And I don't know.
I love that. So the question is, what does self-care look like for you guys? So I feel like we need to give it a different name first, like not self-care. What are we going to call it? What's the masculine way to say self-care, huh? Not talking about beard oil. Anyway, what do you guys do to take care of yourselves?
I have made myself a very early riser. So I'm not far off the 4:30, 4:45 in the morning. I mean, I don't have 83 kids in my house, but what we have one, and part of that journey with her is she is up like clockwork, and I know that my wife is up like clockwork, and so by 4:30 in the morning, we're up. The Bible's been read, time with the Lord. We've worked out, went for a run, some form of physical activity. We're back at the house, and we're getting the house up and running by 6:15, 6:30 in the morning. And I would love to sleep until 8 or 9 o'clock. That would be great. But the best self-care, because I don't think we came up with a better word, was, man, being up at the butt crack of dawn in order to have some time to myself.
No,
it's great.
No.
I'm here for it.
For me, like, how do I keep myself from going insane? I actually, like, just part of the way that I've been wired or whatever, like, I enjoy chaos. And in fact, I need chaos. And if things become too routine, I will start to create chaos. You can just ask my wife. But as much as I enjoy chaos, I also need structure, and they balance each other out. I need one foot in discipline so I can have one foot in chaos. And the more chaotic one foot is in, the more discipline the other foot is in. So like I recognize that makes me weird, but that means that every meal except for dinner every day during the week is the same for me. Like I eat the exact same thing because I don't have to think about it. Like every morning I get up, I eat the same thing for lunch, all of that. I get up, I do the same things. And that morning is highly structured. So I'm up at a certain time. I'm to the gym for this time. As long as the sauna is not broken, I'm in the sauna for a certain time. I'm back home. I take the shower. I get ready. I'm at work by this time. So like that structure helps keep me sane. And if I lose that, then I start to just spiral. So for me, like it doesn't sound like a really cool self-care or whatever thing, but like rigid structure for part of my day is a part of keeping me sane so that I can embrace the chaos of once I get to church. It's like, all right, what's happening today? Well, I've started my morning off with that high structure, so now I'm ready for the chaos.
Is there an element of control, I guess? So you're saying structure, but it sounds like this is what I can control in my life because I have this over here that's maybe not as controlled.
So you're saying, do I struggle with control, and is that something God is actively trying to root out of my life?
That's exactly
yes.
what I'm saying, yes.
I like my way of saying it better, of just discipline and structure. If you want to go the control route, yes, that is true.
I find that to be fascinating, so I'll tattle on my husband for just a minute, because he's also a very early riser. Like the idea of how can I get up before anybody else has a chance of because that's how he needs to start his day, which is very foreign to me. But so it's very interesting to me that the two of you started out with that. And then I would say some of the structure too, like the eating the same things and some of those kinds of things. This was a good question.
Now I know. I want to know what Tim had for
Yeah.
breakfast.
Yeah. Tell us
We'll talk
more.
afterwards.
Okay.
And I like that you said you didn't like Madeline's manly maintenance, but what did you say? So I don't freak out, or
so I don't go insane.
So I don't go insane. No,
I didn't. Sorry, Madeline.
No, but then he just followed it up with, so I don't go insane. So I don't go insane. All right, Rob, Tony. Now we got to know.
So we've tried to be better with this and creating rhythms for both of us. I think Emily's helpful with me, and will say like, hey, would you want to go for a walk? And so like to clear my head, in the moment when like things are chaotic. But really, the rhythms that we have input, a weekly coffee date. So we do Friday mornings, we'll go out to coffee together. And we don't always have to talk for the whole time. We're just like, you hear that? It's nothing. And that's great. That's beautiful. So we do that. We try to get away a few times a year, playing those specifically. And then I have my friend group in Lakeland. We get together and do a guy's birthday celebration for each of our birthdays. So that roughly falls out to about once a quarter. We'll get together, have dinner together, just hang out and just be guys. And that's a lot of fun. So the little one, the daily one, is just I make my own coffee. I do a pour over every morning. And the coffee beans do exactly what I want them to do. I weigh them out. It goes through the grinder. I create a very nice environment, and it's fragrant, and it's amazing, and everyone leaves me alone. And it's fantastic.
Is this before everybody gets up in the morning?
No, that's after we've done all the school drop-offs, and because I work from home, so I get back, and it's about 8:40, 8:45, and I just put the kettle on, and once they see me open the coffee drawer, and hey, Dad's in his own world, so it's great.
Not much more to add here. So it's pretty similar to these guys. Yeah, a little bit. For me, just self-care is the daily devotions in the morning, just staying in the Word and praying each morning, exercising, and for me, it's exercising with other people. So play a lot of pickleball, and Jody knows about that because we've played in a couple tournaments together, and so I play pickleball with other guys a lot, and I think other thing is serving. Whenever I can serve others in some way through discipleship, I disciple some men on occasion. I'm doing that right now. Serve other organizations in the ways that I like to do that. Then if I can get my mind off of just all the stuff that goes on at home and focus on other things, then it helps me. Self-care.
Any of the guys in the audience want to tell us what you do to not go insane? Feel free to shout it out. Cold plunge. Nice. I mean, for you. I would think that sounds terrible. Hot tub, yes. Cold plunge, no. What else? No?
Can I say something else?
Yeah.
So as you guys are talking, it just reminded me too, at least for me, so much of not going insane is less about like I need to add these things or I need this time away, and more about just maintaining balance. And what I mean by that is I truly believe God has created us to be body, mind, and soul. So if I'm focused too much on just taking care of my body to the detriment of my mind and soul, then I'm unbalanced and I'm going to go insane. So trying to find ways to, within the structure or maybe control of the day, just finding ways to, how can I take care of my mind? How can I take care of my body? How can I take care of my soul? And keeping those things balanced, to me, is more important than any unique thing or time away. It's just maintaining within the daily rhythms of life that balance between those three.
That's good. That resonates with me a lot. I had a friend that pointed that out in me because I do tend to want to do the sports thing or and she was like, there's different buckets is the way she explained it. And, there's essentially the same thing, different ways to take care of yourself, and always doing the one is, you're neglecting the others. And so that can still feel out of balance, out of whack. So it's good. Any other questions from our audience? All right, I've got one more, and then we've got plenty of time to talk this through, or we can wrap it up. But I'm just thinking about earning trust with our kids. So especially kids who come from hard places, we know that building trust can be a challenge with our. Well, I was going to say with our girls, but I think just in general, based on what some of our kids have experienced, male trust in particular can be very challenging. So how do you guys maybe think about helping kids feel safe with you, feel chosen, loved, like whatever we want to say, but in light of their history and then being men, what does that look like?
Yeah, I'll go. So my 18-year-old daughter from Uganda, she, whatever she experienced when she was, before we adopted her at age 2 was not good. So she even has some knife marks on her back, permanent from when she was little. That part of Uganda, they practice witchcraft, and so there's a thing they mark the children about whether they're going to sacrifice them or not. So she was brought to an orphanage by some person and just dropped off. So we had to give her a birth date and everything. But she is someone who, when I first met her, I came as a dad to meet her because I went over the country myself instead of my ex-wife coming with me at the time. And when I first met her in the room, she just screamed bloody murder at me. She just screamed and hovered in the corner. And I thought it was maybe because I was the first white person she'd ever seen, because that area of Uganda is not traveled very well by Caucasians. I've come to learn it was because I was male. And so my daughter Brienne has significant issues with men. So whatever happened to her before we adopted her, she was done some pretty bad things, but hurt by men. Just a year ago, when age 17, I took her to get blood work done, and a male was going to draw blood from her, and she screamed in the place. 17 years old, screaming, and the male could not get the blood from her. We had to leave. I came back and said, you need to have a female draw the blood, and it was no problem. No problem. So as being a single dad with this daughter who has issues with men, it makes it a significant challenge with her. She's very sensitive. So I've had to learn to parent her very, very differently. Even than my 15-year-old is not sensitive. I can mess with her and get on her, and she'll do things. But the 18-year-old, I've got to be really careful. I've got to be very, very overly loving, overly nurturing. Just keep assuring her how much she's loved. Keep assuring her that she can do this. She's graduating this week, but she's barely going to graduate. We weren't sure if she was going to graduate until last week, and so she's now pulled it through, and she's going to graduate, but barely. So I'm not sure what her next steps are going to be in life, but I got to keep trying to love her through that and nurture her through that.
I would say for me, it's just consistently showing up. And if it's big events, if it's small events, dance recitals, if they're singing a couple songs at the spring performance, we're there, we're cheering, we're videoing, just like we would do with kids that have my last name. Want them to see that, hey, we're going to show up for you. We're here. And it really kind of depends on the child and, the history that they're coming with. When we were in Lakeland, one of our placements, when she came into our home, even though I'm this Wookiee looking guy, I try to pride myself on the fact that I am relatable. Kids do like me, and I like to engage with children when they come in our home. This little girl wouldn't look at me at all, and luckily my trauma training and TBRI principles is okay, something has happened in her history that showed that either a man similar to me or just men in general, they're unsafe. And so I just thought this was going to be a few days and she'll learn to trust me. We teach our kids, we want to create opportunities to say yes. I am a no parent. So, hey, can we have a snack? Ask me. I want to say yes. And so she would ask my other kids to ask me. And so I let that happen. And then I would say, if this child wants a snack, she can ask me, but then I'd give it to them just so she could hear that. And then I'd turn to her and say, if you want a snack, you just always feel freedom to ask me. And it probably took a month before she would make eye contact with me. And after that, I was one of the children's ministry leaders at our church there in Lakeland. And just one day it just clicked for her. And we were having a conversation over dinner and talking about baptism. We had baptisms that day. And she was like, Mr. Rob, what does it mean to get baptized? And we just had this full gospel conversation. And she just gave her life to the Lord right there. And then she's like, how do I get baptized? We're like, at our church, you write out your testimony so you can read it. She's like, can I have a piece of paper? I was like, sure. Little revivals going around our dinner table right there. And then that moment really just marked a change in our relationship. And it was a really cool thing. So just consistently showing up, not believing anyone's a lost cause, and not expecting to get any praise for it. So you may have to work a long time, but it's good work.
Yeah, I don't know that we've really hit this that much, so I can't speak especially to the extremes of it. Just in the general things, I think recognizing what are apt to be the triggers, typically with things like that, aggression, affection, things like those will set it off. And so dial that all the way back, and you can be very calm and kind of across the room presence at first, and then letting kids kind of dictate how fast that progresses and letting them take the steps that they're comfortable with taking. And really, if they're able to feel, I think, the control of driving it, I believe that helps.
Can I ask a question to your question?
Yeah.
Is that possible? All of you, in some form or another, you mentioned letting kids drive, how fast that process is. Can you talk about how, like, a time with your kids where you've done that and it's been like you've driven it more than you've allowed your kids to drive it? Does that question make sense? Like, when has that gone bad for you? If you push the kids farther than they're ready to go.
So have I made little kids cry?
That's it.
Yes, probably enough times that I don't have a specific example. But yeah, I mean, so especially, again, I don't have the experience with like people, having kids come into my house who are older, who have been through those experiences, as we've tended to take the really young kids. But like, even with kids that I don't know, like at church or other things, like, sure, there's times where you're like really excited or whatever, and they're like, "You're weird, please don't come near me," and they just want to go away. So yes, I have probably made kids cry and made them want me to go away before.
This is funny. I don't know if I should think it's funny. We were gifted tickets to Legoland, and I was like, okay, we only had 10 kids at the time, so breathe. So it was like, whew, only 10. But we were thinking through, because it's like we have 2 biological girls, 8 boys. And so the siblings that we got was they're now 7, 6, 4, 3, and 1 are the boys. And they, I was like, man, these guys jump on walls. They are constantly like climbing up bunk beds, doing all the things. Like, they're gonna love Legoland and the little roller coasters and all these things. And so they were like, I don't know about this, Mr. Rob. I don't know. I'm like, go. You're gonna love the ride. You're gonna love the ride. They're like, why aren't you going? I was like, I get sick if I go in circles, but you're gonna love it. And just screamed the whole time. I mean, and they get off the ride and their eyes are like this, like, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. And I was like, my bad. But how much fun did everyone else have? So yeah.
Yeah.
So this is coming from someone who doesn't have children who are adopted or in foster care, but how do you protect your biological children when you're bringing in so many children that have backgrounds that are hard or traumatic? How do you, I mean, I know they're all your children at the same time. Like, how do you protect, especially you said you have 2 girls with all these guys who have maybe come through stuff. How do you protect them and lead your family well when you're opening your door to possibly things that maybe could harm them? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
That's just a question.
No, you're right. You're right.
That's how you
So the question, is how do you protect other children who have already been in the home when you're kind of introducing additional children who've experienced hard things, like the things that we protect our kids from, right? And now you're like, hey, come live with me. Yeah.
Great question. And part of it is, one, our licensing agency knows that if it's older boys, like, we're just a no for that. If there is a certain type of history that would put the other kids in our home in danger, they don't ask us about that. But even like, especially with our older girls, when we were looking at doing foster care again, when because they were older now, we told them, like, hey, Mom and I feel like this is what the Lord has for us. What I want y'all to do is we're going to take a month. I want you guys to pray, and whatever night of the week, we're going to come back together, and we want to talk about what the Lord's doing in your heart. Like, what are you thinking? And just being really honest, because this is what it's going to cost us as parents. This is what's going to cost y'all, and this is what's going to cost our family. Because we wanted everyone to be all in if it's something that God's calling our family to. And so having a lot of conversations at the front end and then continuing to have those conversations now. We do try to, we have to fight for time with all the kids, so we stagger bedtimes. So we have groups of kids that go to bed at a certain time, and then another group of kids, and then our girls are the last ones. So we try to have quality time with all of them and still do fun things with individuals. So yeah, we protect them as much as we can with that.
Yeah, and for me, I agree 100% what you're talking about. Strong boundaries on the front end just to help keep you from situations where there can be the really bad stuff. I'm going to attack it from a little bit of a different perspective too, of like one of our adoptive sons, he loves babies. And we had a little girl who was with us for about a year. No, the other one. Anyways, for about a year. And I figured you knew where I was going with this, but you can't read my mind. That's too bad. Actually, it's probably better. So we had this little girl for about a year, and then she got reunified. And it broke his heart. And he started having all sorts of just behaviors, and he just uncontrolled. Like we'd be sitting there and we'd be talking, he'd just start crying, like he missed her, he wanted to see her. And part of that comes for me back to, I would love to protect you from that type of pain, but it's not healthy for you, for me to protect you from that. Like following God's not easy. Like it's actually really hard. And there's a pain and there's an adversity that comes from doing that. But following God is really good. And through that pain, he brings just untold joy. And through that adversity, he brings just praise. And so it's me having to really believe that God is using this to produce something within him and using it to produce something within our family that is much better than what we'd have if we avoided the pain. But through that, then just trusting God to do it. And it's being right there with him and talking through it and like, hey, buddy, let's talk about this. And I want you to be able to articulate it. And I want you to be able to name it. And then let's also just pray about it. And let's see what God does through it. And we've got a baby now who, if she goes home, it's going to devastate him again, just significantly. But that's the type of pain that God uses that I don't necessarily want to protect him from. I mean, I do. I want to protect him from it, but it's good for him to go through because that's what God uses in really profound ways. So for me, a lot of that comes back to I had to see God do that in my own life, take significant brokenness and use it to restore something that was more beautiful than existed before so that I know he can do that and I've seen him do that. So it's still hard, but now I can trust him with my kids when it comes to that. So try to protect as much as we can on the front end from certain things, but also just trusting God with other parts of it.
I think there's also this beautiful thing, like our kids can learn, about the hazard of addiction through the DARE program. I don't know if they still do that. No, but you know what I mean? Like you can learn about it there. It's different when you open up your home to a child whose parents are experiencing addiction, and you know what I mean? Like that's a different kind of education, and I think a lot more powerful for our kids. So it's like what you're saying is like, man, I really want to protect them from that, but also like you get to really see the damage that some of these things can cause and develop a heart of compassion towards people, I think over judgment sometimes. So, and then I think to answer your question too, I mean, there's just general safety planning that has to happen sometimes too. It's not unusual for families to have cameras in certain areas or certain kinds of locks or rules around screens in bedrooms. And, there's all kinds of specific safety planning that I think you can do to make sure everybody stays safe. So,
and
yeah.
I appreciated what you said, how you invite your biological children into that conversation and how you go to them first and say, we're thinking about doing this. I think that's very beautiful that you allow them to be part of the process.
So, all right, well, I'm going to.
Can I ask a question or are we going to go?
Yeah, just we're landing the plane, but go for it.
So real quick, because I'm curious.
Yeah.
Whether it's adoption, fostering, having grown up in foster care, how has community impacted your journey? For better or worse, but having people around you who can relate to that journey, how has that affected what your journeys looked like?
I'd say it's been vital for us to be able to have support from both sides, from people that have walked the road with us that we can be open with, and it's like, hey, here are the behaviors we're dealing with, and they're like, it's normal. Like, this isn't like every situation is unique, but it's common. What you're going through is common, and you're going to experience this, and that's really helpful. But then it's also helpful to be in community with people that don't know, because they have an opportunity to care for us in a way that is different. When we're like, gosh, we just need to breathe, and they're like, hey, we'd love to provide that for you. Yeah, we couldn't do what we do without community.
Yeah, I don't know that as far as kids, well, not kids, adults in my life who have been adopted, I don't know that I have. I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, any specific, outside of, select family members, but like no, okay. So I have a lot of hold on, back up. It's 8:00. I've been up since 4:30. All right. So I have a lot of family that has been adopted. Very few of them have thought about their adoption through a spiritual lens, is what I'm trying to say. So I can talk about, and we can crack jokes about, I'm the 6'4" guy in a family full of 5' women. Obviously, that joker was adopted. We can make those jokes as grown adults. But as far as the people, I can talk about biblically and theologically what this does to me. That select group is very little. What I do have that is very valuable is the community around me who knows my story and still calls me up higher. Because one of the things that we talked about, that we've talked about often, even well before we got married, was I don't want to grow up. I want adoption to be a part of my story, but I don't want that to be who I am. Like I want to be Michael, who stands on his own 2 feet, who God has used suffering and difficulties and all these things to form something in me to be all God has called me to be. And so it's helpful for me to have a formational community around me that allows me the opportunity to be that, but not live in that identity. That I can be the guy that was adopted, that's got some stuff to work through still when it comes to his adoption, but God's called more of me. He's called more out of me than just that part of my story.
Well, thank you guys. Let's give them a round of applause for sharing. And I think Madeline's going to come up, maybe do a couple of quick announcements, and then you guys can enjoy the rest of your evening. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to mention that if you did need a certificate of attendance, those are going to be on the sign-in table. And then also we have to-go boxes, pizza, extra food in the back, so please feel free to take whatever you would like. And then please, I beg of you, grab backpacks. There are backpacks lined up on the hallway right outside the door. They are labeled with gender and size. It's like pajamas, little toiletries, stuffed animal, book, things like that. Just a cute little donation that we received from a organization that wanted to give us some things for the kids that we have in our home. So if y'all would not mind taking 1 or 2 or 10, we would love it. And yeah, so that's everything. And thank you guys so much for being here. And thank you to